so I haven't read it yet, other than suggesting that I do it, but Megan's got the information for everything to do that, so I think I'm fine. But I'm not limited, because I understand it, you gotta do some technical application to make it all happy. It's not just a matter of renewing your expired SSL.
You gotta
You
install
have
it.
to do something else, yeah, and that something else is not something that
Yeah, my favorite.
yeah, it's beyond mine and yours, so we'll have to figure it out.
Josh, I'm Dave. I know we talked once before.
Good seeing you again. Yeah, you too.
I don't know if you need this for anything, but
No, but you can pull it out.
you don't have a slide for us, Bob?
Yeah, yeah.
I can just play stuff behind you.
I could do a whole thing on the technology of pumping. That's what Dave said.
Oh, yeah.
I was boring Bob. You could define what NPSH is, all kinds of fun stuff like that. It's like HVAC, you have to know define what static pressure is. You know. We'll get this back in there. I like using my hands when I talk about it too, because then it makes it look like I know what I'm doing. You know. It's kind of a thing. You ever get trained on the psych chart? No, you don't want to. No. On a psychometric chart? No. It's the chart they used back when we had Lutheran planners. It's a mega chart, and it has three ranges for temperature, pressure, and you go on to determine when you're in the pressure and look at the gas or a substance. Nobody can use this, but
No, and everything has a different, yeah.
this Eric.
Hello.
Hi, Eric. I'm Dave.
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, same here.
Josh, could you slide down?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And just so you know, we have started the live stream.
Yes, so be it.
Mike's around. Market.
What's that? Your mic looks like it's off, but what's that? I cannot
Audio's
hear.
live. If I turn this on.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is, when you look at the screen and it's just you.
When do is you or Brian's coming in?
No, I don't.
No, I don't.
We have a friend.
You know, it all counts as you're here.
Pardon?
It's all it counts for, if
All
you're
that
here,
counts
it's all
is-
we need. All we need. One person.
One
two
vote, one person, two votes.
She gets to
That's
swing-
a motto, right?
She gets to swing it.
I assume he'll be here.
I think-
If he got the message,
Oh, we,
the meeting message, I'm sure he'll be here.
no worries.
Let me just look and make sure that the live stream started.
The owl has landed.
Owl has landed.
Oh, did you go that route?
Friday morning, I'm gonna work with David.
Oh, cool.
You had a chance to do anything with it, or no?
Not yet.
No.
Friday.
And when will the computer? Right over there?
It's their turn. So,
Well, for Monday's good. I love it.
but I mean, technologically, I think we can look at them. Depending on what we do. So.
Not so fast, Josh.
We have our own owl.
I used to think that before I actually saw this, I thought my head would actually turn it to water. I wouldn't know like you.
Maybe that'll be generation 3.0 or
It's not necessary. It's a 360 camera.
you could just bring one of your drones in and just like hover around the
One for each person.
Welcome to the future, everyone. Isn't it great? You know, I gotta say, Farley, I've been so impressed. I know I've seen like negative comments, but I just want to say that I'm very impressed with the plowing experience out on Martin Corner Road. They are so nice and helpful. I don't know if that's what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear, but
There are some other roads where you can't get a positive comment on anybody about them.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, people put their mailboxes like in the middle of the road though. It's not their fault that I couldn't, they came and picked mine up after hitting it, and I was like, I'm not sure you're legally required to do that. They were so nice about it. And I mean, that obviously Martin Corner should be like the lowest priority, but it's still passable most of the time.
We're gonna roll.
Sorry.
Okay, just a reminder before we start, we're live, and these microphones, when you push the button to green, they'll be able to hear you. So just remember to turn to green when you're ready. But with that, I'd like to open the Board of Directors meeting for Midco Solid Waste Corporation for March 23rd, 2022. So without further ado, we're going to go into our agenda. The first item is anybody, any public or director, have any comments that are non-agenda related? Mr. Lindquist.
What is the best way to speak? Do I go into a microphone?
Yeah, over here, we'll give you one. Make sure we can hear you.
Okay, is that clear enough? Look close enough? Loud enough?
I suspect,
Yes or no?
I suspect it
It'd
is.
be good, you sound at least, I mean, the system always likes it when you keep your mouth close to
Okay.
it, but that's
All
what
right.
we're told. But
Okay.
I can hear you very well.
All right, that's wonderful. Name is Peter Lindquist. I'm here with my associate JP Fecto. We're both Camden residents, and we're members of the West Bay Rotary Satellite Club, and we're here simply for an informational input from us, hopefully to you, and eventually vice versa. Allison has spoken with me, so has Mr. St. Laurent, and we are interested in 3 little programs that I believe you're interested in. So this is, we would like to say, is a cooperative and collective activity. I've printed off a couple of sheets that we've been talking about in our Rotary group, and with St. Laurent, and I will just hit them right now. We want to support and help implement and help build on the regenerations program that you have up there at the facility, where you turn bicycles and lawnmowers back into useful items. And we've got a couple of dates that we're proposing to help implement or help support that. The other idea that we want to present is called a repair cafe. It's been very successful up in Belfast and around the country, where people bring in moderately broken items and they get repaired by volunteers that our satellite club would help set up and manage. Again, we've never done this before, so this is a lot of work on our end. Again, this is informational. We're not trying to show you that this is all in the bag and it's ready to run, but we want to tell you or offer you this is what we are working on. So if there's any communication that needs to be had, we'd like to hear it before we get 3 or 4 weeks or a month from now and somebody says, where did this come from?
Okay.
Last but not least is a trash pickup in the local communities. We could figure out which ones, Lincolnville, Rockport, and Camden. This is something Allison and other members of the community have been worked on, but we'd like to really work on it with a little more emphasis and a little more publicity and a little more marketing so that it really gets more people involved, and I believe maybe actually take place more than once or twice this spring, summer, and fall. So if we do it right, it could roll out and be a little more productive, and I think a little more neighborly and more community-oriented.
Thank you,
Any other
Peter.
questions,
Yeah, just I wanted to write down your name. I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
That's JP Fecto.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the minutes.
I'm going to
that's
leave
all.
these here. I'll send PDFs to Allison and Falciani.
That's fine.
And just so that you can,
Dave
if you,
probably would be a good one.
Yeah.
right, he's right. And
Well, thank you, Peter. I want to say, West Bay Rotary and West Bay, selfishly, I'm a member of the West Bay Rotary, so.
I do know that.
And so are you. And the amount of stuff they do and the satellite has done has just been greatly appreciated. A lot of it has been in the town of Camden, by the way, but now they're kind of branching out to the 4 towns through Midcoast Solid Waste, and we do appreciate.
Trash is part of that, so.
Thank you both. Do you have
If
any?
anybody has any questions or
Anything
comments?
you wanted to say before?
I think Peter covered it quite well. Thank you.
Great. Peter, thanks for coming.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you
all.
both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to move on to the review and approval of meeting minutes for January 26, 2022 and March 2nd, 2022. Are there any comments on the meeting minutes for either, or you want to start with January 26 first? Any comments, or do I have a motion to accept?
I move that we approve the January 6, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion, not hearing any. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. March 2nd. March 2nd. Any comments on the March 2nd meeting? No? Motion, please.
I move to approve the March 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made, second, discussion, not seeing any hands. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you again. On our third item, it is normally we would have our written facility manager report, and so I apologize for not having that at this meeting, but we all wanted to, first of all, welcome Dave back. And appreciate what he's already done and doing. But given that, Dave, the board is always interested in anything that you see or will see that could have maybe a near-term decision contemplation by the board. It's more of a heads-up time period, or any major issues you think the board should be apprised of. Should it, something like might hit the newspaper tomorrow or something like that, the board should be apprised as best we can. So if you could, if there's any items you think that are of that magnitude you'd like to mention to the board, please feel free to do so.
Right now?
Yeah.
Do you want, there's the potential recycling area changes with that?
Is that what you're talking about? The
No.
potential?
No, that's coming yet. That's coming yet. That's item
Yeah.
items 5. Other than the potential recycling recommendation discussion, anything that I know, well, for example, we know we're working on the leachate system, and we know and that's a motion in progress. I understand that, but that's a potential financial hit to the books downstream in the order of.
$30,000, $40,000.
Okay, so that's just a heads up for everybody.
There's some work that needs to be done to the extraction well and the thermometer.
That's logically going to be coming, and it has to be forthcoming because it's not working quite correctly yet.
That could probably fit right into the budget, though. I wouldn't say
I
that's
think
necessarily.
I would agree.
We have some money for.
Yeah, I think it's maneuverable in the budget, I believe, but that's one of the biggest ones I was aware of. If that's the only one, that's good news. If there's anything else, Dave, otherwise we'll.
There's a couple of outstanding items that I'm looking into right now.
Turn on his
that
mic.
need to be
Oh, yeah, your
resolved.
microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
There's a couple other items that are outstanding that need to be resolved. We have to camera the line, the leachate line from the odor control building, from that point to the extraction well. It's a requirement of the annual report. It hasn't been done. So you really don't know what you're going to get into when you start doing that. We have had some settlement that's happening in that area, so there could be some problems, but I won't know until I do that.
We're suspecting a broken pipe.
Well, or a leaking pipe. or-
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
We don't know that, but we're going to inspect it, and then when we inspect it, we'll know. And then we have to do some planning for the North Quarry for probably some stormwater overflow, some preparing for that. That might need some attention, but nothing immediate.
All right. With that, I will move on to the fourth item, which regrettably is to request the board to make a motion to accept the resignation of Mike Martinez per the letter that was in your packet. Can I have a motion to accept the resignation, please?
I move to. Go ahead.
So moved. But if you have a better, or nicer worded version, that's fine too.
Go ahead.
So I just said so moved. I would move that we accept the resignation of Mike Martinez.
I'll second that.
Motion is made and seconded. Any questions?
Wendy's reading the letter.
Okay. Give her a second, sure. It's okay. It's okay. Not a long one.
It's always so nice when people admit that, like, hold on, I just need to read the letter, rather
Yes.
than doing the smile and nod.
Yeah,
I'll
I
just
agree.
pretend like I read it, like back in middle school. No, that's what's great about Wendy. It's
Not seeing any discussion, hands raised, I'll ask for all those in favor. Again, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Again, regrettably.
Can we go back? I do have one other thing.
Please,
Yeah,
yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
a neighbor of the facility, Bob Zontini, he owns the Rockport Company. I don't know if people are familiar with him. He's a cabinet maker. So if you're going out the exit, he'd be right on your right-hand side. He's putting some solar panels on his roof, and he needs to possibly cut a few trees so he gets full sun for those solar panels. So he wants to install 77 solar panels, which will supply 35 kilowatts, he's saying. I looked it over. I don't really see, it's not like they're nice shade trees on the side of the road. They're some Norway maples that, we could probably replant something at a lower growing shrubbery or something like that. I don't think it's going to impact anybody. The only one who gets impacted is really him. He's going to be looking at a dumpster. So I figured I'd
Sure.
let you guys know. about
Is
that.
it on the Linden side?
No, well, if you're exiting, yeah, it's kind of in that direction. So if you're leaving the facility right before the gate, it would be right there on your right-hand side.
Got it.
PG Willie is.
Go, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whose property are the trees on?
They're on our property, or on Midcoast Solid Waste's property, and it's right on his line. And so,
He's offered to bear that expense.
yeah, he's not asking for us to do anything other than for the permission to cut the trees back so that he can, they said it wouldn't be worthwhile for him to do that. He wouldn't get enough sunlight in that location. So he's trying to offset his costs.
How many trees is he talking about?
3 larger trees and probably about 3 smaller trees.
Any erosion issues we need to be concerned about?
I'll look at that a little bit more carefully. I didn't see any really that I'm concerned with at this point in time, but, I told him that we might need to stabilize that bank with some other plants and trees.
Brian?
I have a little bit of apprehension on things like this because this tends to open up potential cans of worms for other people wanting, oh, I'd like that tree cut down because of X or Y, and I'll bear the cost. So I'm not sure it should be as simple as I'd like those trees cut because I want to benefit somehow from it. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
I mean, any more than
It's
if
totally up to you guys.
any
That's why I'm
more
bringing it in front of you,
Than if
yeah.
it's your property and I'm your
Yeah.
next door neighbor and I said, Dave, I'd like those trees cut down, and you say, well, I like those trees, but it would benefit me. I'll cut them, I'll bear the final
Yeah.
financial responsibility. So I don't think there again, I'm trying to represent everybody, so.
Yep. Allison?
Part of,
Oh, yeah.
part of what I'm thinking though is that, he's a neighbor. It's in a location where we potentially want to move water to, right next to him, adjacent to him.
Oh.
So that's where I think what you're saying there is that we don't want to miss the opportunity to just say, oh, yeah, we're going to be neighborly and hope for neighborliness. In return, that property has been, it was several years ago that we looked at it to actually consider acquiring it for Midcoast Solid Waste. It wasn't, in the past, it's been for sale for really inexpensively, and that doesn't seem to be in our best interest, but it is a property line that's really close to that exit road. And when we've looked at different things like moving, the potential for moving the scale, eventually to have a scale at the exit too, or the quarry is going to need to, that north quarry that's filled with water. Some of the engineers believe it will eventually overflow, and part of the planning for separating the two quarries was that the water-filled quarry would overflow and need to go across the road there. So it might be that we need that property owner to be cooperative with us in the future. And so it's like, I think to speak to what Brian is saying, that sometimes we miss opportunities to make sure that the public property or public goals get to be fulfilled, and we end up just sort of compromising with private property owners. We say, okay, but then when it comes to the town needing to do something, we've missed the opportunity to negotiate where we can, so I don't know. I mean, it would be good to just see the plan possibly of where he wants to remove the trees so we could see.
Yep.
And then also ask if any of our, I don't know what if there's a boundary line disagreement there, anything like that.
No, but I think it's a good opportunity to kind of tie into some of our future goals of moving the water in that location and work with him
Right.
in that regard. It's an opportunity possibly to say, hey, look, we don't mind you doing this, but we are planning on moving our water from the North Quarry over to this side, and we may have to do some work. We may need a construction easement because he's right on the property line to build
Or drainage easement.
drainage or any of that. So it's a good time. He's very cooperative. He's a nice guy. I don't think there's any reason why he wouldn't do that, but it's a good opportunity to kind of formalize that. Yeah.
But I think the board should consider, to Brian's point, a policy with regard to these kinds of requests to come to. This one sounds like it meets a number of criterion one would put on a policy, but otherwise you're right. You're going to have people coming in and saying, I want to do the same thing. And by the way, just cutting the trees down is sometimes not enough. Sometimes you have to replace with lower vegetation or erosion control issues and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think we had an issue in Hope with True Park a few years ago. It had to do with whether these trees were a danger to the next door neighbor. And we got a bunch of tree people in because the neighbor wanted them cut on the town's.
Sure.
This happens to us all the time.
Yeah.
So tell me about it.
So, everybody looks at things a little differently, so I think we need to we can't just say, I'm glad you brought it to.
Oh, yeah,
attention,
yeah,
obviously, but I don't think it's as simple as, go ahead and cut the trees.
No, I think it should be,
I don't think that's simple.
it should be
Given
crafted
the
with
way-
all.
The world we live in today.
I think with all the things you mentioned, it should be crafted that way in any letters between us and communication that we're allowing this because of these circumstances which you just
Yeah, I
described.
think the bare minimum, you have at least a construction easement or some type of that kind of,
To do the water,
right, in the future.
that's trading
Then
on.
we're covering ourselves to do that work, because we know the water has to go in that direction right next to him,
Right.
on his,
Right.
right along his property line.
Okay.
Right, that's what
All right. Well, thanks. I think it is important to bring those things up to, I think, Brian's point.
Just so I understand, I'm gonna talk with him. I'm gonna request that we possibly have maybe an easement agreement,
A construction easement?
construction easement, and I'll come back to the board with that information.
Okay, so I have a few things. First of all,
Sorry, I'm just going to say the obvious. So anything that we do having to do with real property has to be in writing to be effective. So we just wanna
Absolutely.
make sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so just so I'm aware of what we're talking about, these are the compactors. Are you referring to this building here?
So where's the gate?
Wish I could throw this on there. Is there a way to do that
I mean,
quickly?
this is probably, it's more just like, explore it a little bit, see if there's a benefit.
He's
to
gonna
us.
bring-
We're
he's
going
gonna-
to bring it back. I wouldn't think it would be fully.
I just want to understand this right now.
Okay.
So the
The back gate?
gate's here, the entrance,
The entrance, yeah.
and
Okay,
the compactors are here.
okay, yeah. And you're going, as you're exiting,
Yeah, exiting here.
right where the circle comes together,
Here.
right there, yeah, to the right of that.
So these, okay.
Right behind where we are storing the swap out containers.
Okay.
Is there a way to have him come and present at our next meeting?
Sure,
And
I'm
just-
sure he'd
I
be
would
more than
prefer
happy to do that. Yeah, he's a really nice
Oh,
guy.
I think Dave said you're going to bring it back to the board and talk about the elements of whatever agreements there are or need to be, but it's a forthcoming item, so, yep.
So would you rather have me do that, or do you want me to bring
Well,
it?
When does he want to do the
You know,
work?
I'm not sure,
He wants to do it fairly quickly.
well, I'm not sure, if his president, you'd have to make a judgment if his president's going to help, but the board needs to see, I think, when they're saying is I'd like to see what the agreement are, what the plan is, and take it from there. That's what I think it was, best basically. That's what I'm hearing. It makes sense, because you can start a precedent that you're going to pay for later. There are a lot of homes that are still properties for sale in Linden, and that they abut the property of the solid waste facility, yeah. And I don't, who knows? So careful.
We have encroachment issues. I can,
Yeah.
if anybody ever wants to walk the property lines, I can.
There you go. All right, so let's move on.
glad I brought it
But
up.
thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
It's like that tree thing from Camden. I mean, you know the.
I'm the tree warden, so I know all
It's nice
about
to see
trees.
this group
yeah.
is so pro-tree.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize.
To our fifth item on the agenda, this is one that's actually been floated before, and by the way, the intent here is not to make a decision, it's just to resurrect the topic, and perhaps even, if the board considers, perhaps, for example, the Strategic Planning Committee to take a look at this and put more flesh on the bone of the idea, or not. But I'll let Dave describe it, but this has been discussed before, and it's really a revised process flow from what we have today for recycling materials. As you know, today, we have these big containers that are there in various colors and well painted now, and they're moved and filled and moved every day. And so, Dave, with that introduction, I'll let you introduce it.
So, real quickly, there's a couple problems with the facility, the way I see it being run right now in terms of safety and in terms of overhandling. And the overhandling causes excess work and need for more employees. So what I'm proposing is something I did in Rockland, very similar to what I did in Rockland. And it's also incorporates some of the basic principles of lean manufacturing, which is, reducing movement within the facility. So right now, like Bob says, we take the larger containers and we move them, we fill them, and then we move the smaller ones back and forth to the recycle building. And there's a lot of room for people getting hit. The roll-offs are being put, loaded and unloaded constantly. We're holding up traffic. So a big part of the recycling is that part of the operation. So if you could have that material put in place where it can be taken then and put right into the baler, that would reduce that whole portion of the operation. So it's almost like the facility was designed for it. And I don't understand why it's not that way right now. Someone must have, had a better idea or changed their mind, or I don't know. But really, that facility is designed, I think, for you to come in to the gatehouse and drive right under the awning, okay? And you'd have a series of holes in the wall, and the inside's already set up just like Rockland was with the stalls. And what you do is, and the stalls actually have angle bar on the inside where boards can go to accumulate the material. So what happens is, residents drive in, they put their cardboard in each hole in the wall. They're under an awning for the most part. On the inside, the area fills up, and then when there's a bale's worth, then you make a bale. So the job then becomes managing the inside of that and looking at the stalls and making sure the windows are clear, and that when they're approaching the time to make a bale, they can kind of plan that out, instead of moving these containers back and forth constantly. And so what you would do is you drive in, to do it, you need to cut holes in the walls, so you have to have a concrete work done, saw cutting. And then if you want to really keep the flow working really well, you would probably move the scale so you could have 2 lanes of traffic.
Right.
So then you would put your scale over on the left-hand side by JQ North, by the guard railing. And that would allow you to have the flow.
The scale you're referring to is here.
Yeah.
Move it.
Can I go over here?
This wall.
I could come up with a better picture. This is just what I came up with quickly, but there's.
Watch out for a wire.
So basically, you flow for recycling would come in here, you'd have 2 lanes, you'd throw the stuff inside the building right here. The people inside the building would just have to manage the inside. You'd eliminate all this truck traffic, the need for a CDL license or for someone trained to use the freight liner. This is one of the biggest liabilities we have at the facility, moving these cans in and out. Then you put the scale over here ultimately, and now your MSW traffic that needs to be weighed and your landfill traffic that needs to be weighed can just come in and just come around here and go into the landfill or go out that way. You'd have to have them loop around and come back out. That's the only thing that would be a little tricky. But it really benefits the recycling piece, because when people come in, recycle, they drive in, and then they drive out. It just has a nice flow to it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'd like to kind of have a group help me with, maybe possibly, come up with some costs to do that. I think it would benefit the facility quite a bit. It would reduce a lot of the handling, and it would get rid of a lot of safety issues.
Yeah, again, this has been discussed briefly before, actually, Dave, and it's kind of common. I have to admit, those trails have always been an amazement to me that we haven't had more problems with somebody's getting smashing their feet or something, or there's a lot of liability, requires a CDL. And
They've fallen off. There was
well,
one.
and then there's material flow. You've got to take those material, bring it in, and empty them in the barn, and personnel has to, do their thing. This way, the nice benefit, the personnel are basically working indoors all year.
That's what I was thinking, they're gonna be working.
Yeah. Pretty much.
You have somebody working under the awning helping people go, this goes here, that goes there. They're not out in the elements. And then you open up that whole area too. That whole area becomes open at that point on the left-hand side where the containers are.
See, this is what happens now. It comes in here and
Right?
Looks-
Because they're under a
yeah.
awning.
It's really set up for, I did exactly the same thing in Rockland, and the guy that was running the recycling facility went from running around like crazy to almost twiddling his thumbs.
This looks very dangerous. The current system of,
It's
of
terrible.
bringing the cans in and
Yeah.
unloading.
It's,
I mean, this picture is kind of terrifying to me.
You already have some of this bin set up. but
Right.
The holes Dave's talking about are here.
Right.
So the
well, they're a little lower, Bob, I
A little lower,
think.
but
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, right there. They'd be cut right through that.
Right through that,
Yeah.
traffic comes in here, and sees a hole in the wall for plastics, whatever it is, and they throw it in the hole. And you're really eliminating, it's a huge step.
it's like what we, and when we went on
Just
that
like dairy.
transfer station tour with Jim before.
Yeah.
It's very similar
Can
to
you bring
what.
a picture from Derry?
The residents end up being
Yeah,
undercover.
and then this is them getting dumped.
Residents, yeah, they'll like being undercover.
At least most of them. If you did a second lane, that they wouldn't be undercover. But I mean, for the most part,
What were you thinking? Were you thinking that they pull into park or they just stop their cars in that lane?
it's really no different than what they're doing now,
Yeah.
I mean, they're really pulling up and they're stacking up in front of the containers,
Yeah.
and some people will go two abreast.
Yep. Some won't. Depends on the traffic of the day.
Dave, in the event that you have a vehicle that needs to go over the scales first, then go out and unload, then come back in, it's congested there. If, I assume you're saying put the scales where the dumpsters are now.
Keep them way over to the left by the guardrail.
Left of the
Well,
dumpsters.
how would you get a truck coming from, that needed to go over the scales a second time to get their dry weight?
They would have to loop back around. We'd have to
Okay.
figure out a way of looping them back around or creating a mini loop on that left-hand side.
Okay.
That's the
Brian.
challenge.
Okay.
That's why ultimately, if we could have a second
Brian.
scale.
Question. If, sort of like the idea, but I see a little bit of a, sort of a flaw when you have to change out the container inside. Let's say it's the first bit, let's say we've got people driving in, we've got containers, boom, they're filling, okay.
There's no containers anymore, though. They're putting it into the
all
stall.
So what happens when one's full?
A stall,
A stall is full,
They make
in
it-
the middle of the day.
they make a bail.
Okay, so that's gonna stop everything.
No, they pull it out. They start making the bail. The whole thing's ready to start filling again to make another bail.
The people internally, the employees are constantly working in the building
Okay, but
to,
if they're gonna pull it out with a vehicle, isn't that gonna stop the flow of traffic through that?
They're inside the
Think of a
building.
stall
It's in the
picture.
building.
They're inside the building.
Stalls.
Pull it out, put it in the baler.
It's one that's not, where you can see it clearly.
the building again.
It's a basic Kanban system, you fill when you get to the line. When the line's filled, you remove the material, you put it in the baler, you make the bail,
Okay,
the thing's
so
open.
where are people driving?
They're on the outside.
Oh, okay, I get, okay, the hole, okay, that's where the hole in the concrete comes in,
Yeah,
okay.
it's just a hole and you throw it in and it goes into the stall.
Okay.
And then from the stall, it goes in the baler. Right now, it goes into a container, then the container gets picked up, and then the container gets moved in the building, then the container gets picked up again and then emptied in the building, and it's like 3-4 steps.
It's crazy. They dump it and then they push it
I was
into these
confused
stalls.
when you
And
said the people were in the.
Yeah.
Terrifying if they were in there with their cars.
Get rid of some people we
But it's
don't want.
basically what happens
See, look,
now.
I mean, look at that right there. That's like dangerous right there. That's not something you really want.
Well, I said the side advantage of people working indoors versus all year long.
Do you have a rough sense of how much this?
This is a big capital cost.
It's not huge, but that's one of the things I think we need to put more flesh on the bone for. And but this is really to make sure
Moving of
the board had no
scales.
adamant.
It's the most
That's most
expensive.
If you
expensive.
all said, no way in heck, we're not going to waste the time, but I think we can get this into a more strategic look, and we can come back with more accurate pictorial, as well as traffic flow, as well as, cost estimate to do this. You're not doing a heck of a lot here. Biggest cost is probably getting rid of the containers.
I mean, this is so obvious,
probably use the
it's shocking we
containers
haven't done this yet.
And I did the same thing at the other place, and it worked so good. It just went from handling, a handling nightmare to literally cutting the workload in by 2/3. And it was that much.
Allison?
If anybody remembers too, when we did the gut project here where we had to fill when this part got filled, which is why, this is how water used to seep from this water-filled quarry over to the waste-filled quarry. And so when that got filled, they had to do some reworking of temporarily we couldn't have all that recycling area at all. And so they, what I'm told is that they went back to the original plan, which was the blue building that's in the middle now. Let's see, that they cut holes in the side. They already had holes in the side of that one. And everybody, let's see, way too many pictures of the transfer station here. I'm a big fan of it, as you can. So this here on the other side, there are already holes. And so people were putting their recycling in there, and then they had to take the fork truck and drive back and forth. And I'm told that this was actually the reason that this building already had those holes was because that used to be the way. I don't personally remember it, but they used to do it like that. But it was like too many trips back and forth to that big building. And so then they instituted these big containers in order to make it be big. It was made a little bit of a difference because it was bigger loads, but you still had the loads back and forth. But a lot of people said, wow, this is great, during that temporary time where you're just putting it into the holes there. So it was interesting to see that it actually, during that time, it did work fairly well. So being able to just implement that same idea over here seems pretty smart.
I told the employees about it, and they're like, this is what we wanted all along.
Yes, of course they did.
That's the other part, too, yeah. I mean, they thought, it wasn't like I had to twist their arm. They were like, that makes way too much sense, because they don't like moving these containers either.
Yeah, it's not, go ahead, Deborah.
I remember before we had some open positions, and I was just wondering.
Microphone, please.
I remember before we had some open employee positions, and so do we still have some open ones? And I was just wondering if maybe this means that some of those maybe don't get filled, or
No, I mean, we
don't have any
don't have any
connection.
open positions.
you don't have
right
any,
now.
they've
No,
been filled
no.
now. Yeah.
But, we have temporary employees, and you have attrition, and if you do all of this, and then you find it's more efficient, and then you don't need as many
Yeah,
people, you
sure.
don't fill the role.
Yeah.
So it seems, obviously, we've got a little bit more flesh to put on the bone, but I'm not hearing any objections to proceeding with it, Dave, so I think we need to. I don't want to put any dates on it, but it'd be nice to get this done sooner than later. So we should probably raise as a priority, maybe, I would suggest a strategic planning committee get together and help to put together a presentation package for the board to say, yeah, that's what we want to do.
Who's on that committee?
Who?
Yeah, who's on it?
Dave is, he always has been, actually. Allison is, well, it's facility, the facility manager has always been on the
Right.
committee. Allison was added. I'm on the committee. And Mr. Colonel is in the committee.
I think Eric too, yeah.
That's somebody
Right,
from our
Eric.
report.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. That's, so,
You're interested in recycling? Oh, great.
right. So that's what it is. Okay.
We've been one of the less active committees recently.
Mine's less active, I've never met the personnel committee.
Yeah, another issue, of course. Let's not deal with it. But anyhow, that was the purpose of this item, just to raise the flag on it. Financials, Allison, do we have anything at this moment we want to discuss financials, or do we want to go address any items later? Do you have anything?
We're doing
globally?
okay. We're actually really doing okay.
That's what I thought.
Especially, when you operate understaffed for a long period of time, you spend less money as long as nothing horrible happens. So that's, we could go into the details of it, but we're.
One quick question on financials.
Sure.
On our sheetrock, our revenue and our expenditures don't match up as to, now,
Well, even out, but we should examine that.
Like, we've collected 66% of, the supposed money to this date, or to whatever this was.
Right.
But we've only received 50% to pay for it. So let me ask you, are the people that are dumping the sheetrock, is it a pay-as-you-go? Because that should be self-funded, correct?
Absolutely.
So those numbers should match. In theory, right? I mean, maybe there is a little lag, but there wouldn't be.
Well, no, it's not, they do have accounts, so actually I take that back. A lot of them would have accounts that would be carrying a balance.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
30 days or 60 days, but I mean,
Yeah.
in general, that should be pretty much in alignment, right? Mm-hmm. So are we not I guess this
I do
gets
think
my
there's some
wheels
issues with
turning.
the landfill revenue.
Are we being charged more since we set the fees, and are the fees not adequate to meet what the charge? So this, just looking at this, and said, well, those two should be a little closer than what they are. So
I think that's
why
a
I'm bringing it up.
larger, so if, at the micro level, there are some landfill revenue issues too that should be looked at a little bit more carefully. There's a mixed load.
Right.
So
That's the-
one of the things that was instituted was a mixed load category, and that, which we sort of I was just looking at this issue of like, why is the landfill revenue lower? And one of the employees said, oh, well, it could be in mixed loads. We're doing a lot of those. And I said, that's not in our budget. That's not a line item. But it's for when people come in and they have many different things, like sheetrock and it really shouldn't be sheetrock, but I don't know if they're maybe bundling that in. The idea is if you have half MSW and half stuff for the landfill, instead of making people go over the scale 4 total times, what they do is you can just pay the higher rate for everything. And that makes sense. It helps with the traffic or whatever. But what it does is at the time they're not calculating, okay, well, I think that I just charged the mixed load rate, but that was 40% MSW and 60% landfill. And it's overall, I think Midcoast ends up bringing in enough money from that, but it might not accurately show
line
where
item.
it's going. So that was something that we kind of flagged the other day. Like we may need to take a closer look at this and how much it's throwing things off. The sheetrock would be something to follow up on. I don't know what you think. Dave, feel free to jump in and at any point. That's something to follow up on and see how they're doing that. Are they allowing that process with the mixed loads to include sheetrock? Is it a training issue?
I think first I should look at what the cost is for sheetrock disposal, just to make sure that's not gone up. And then second, I think Allison's right. I think when they do the mixed load, it's probably not always getting allocated to the sheetrock account. It's probably going to the landfill account. Or it's going to, maybe it's MSW and sheetrock, so they say, all right, mixed load.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get allocated exactly where it needs to.
That's usually a root cause. It's not that anybody's playing a shell game. It's more that, the counting system sometimes is not as accurate as because of what you just
I
said.
realize it would be super hard to
It
be
is.
95% on, but
Yeah.
it just struck me that
No, it's a
those
good
numbers
question.
were.
That's a good question.
So I wondered if something had changed, where
No.
the costs of many things have gone up. Did we budget poorly, and, has it doubled to get rid of
I
it?
mean,
or-
that's highly
No,
likely.
that's a good question, Brian.
I can ask, I'll make sure, that hasn't gone up, or the hauling. The hauling could have gone up for the sheetrock,
Right.
so.
Right, so then we potentially have to adjust the fee.
If that's the case, yeah.
Because, as Allison, the last meeting, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I agree with her view, and I have sort of the same view, that it should be more of the user fee should fund this facility, not my next door neighbor who doesn't
Right.
have any trash to take to the dump.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
And the mixed load should be significantly higher than someone who's sorting it.
That's
Right, because
that's
it's a
key.
convenience that,
Right.
and that's
Key.
an opportunity for
Yeah,
us
we
to,
can't, we can't pull all the drywall off the truck and then take all the wood off the truck. It just doesn't work. But mixed loads, that's usually what's done.
A lot of people, not everybody separates everything when they bring
No.
it to the transfer
No.
station, so that mixed load needs to capture the costs.
Yep.
But it is helpful to be able to do that for the person in the gatehouse, because if you ever stood there and watched him,
Yes.
he's extremely busy, and if someone has to come back and forth across the scale 5 times, that just creates a lot more work.
Right.
I mean, that gatehouse position is hopping. That guy's really moving all the time.
Heard. Any other questions on the budget like that one? Anybody else have anything else? Is there anything else you wanted to add at
I
this
mean, I
point?
think that's a great point, and that also we should probably emphasize the board a while back, there's a policy that says that the cost of sheetrock disposal is supposed to be, it's supposed to even out. So if you discover that it doesn't, that we should just go through the normal process of, the fee should be raised, I think, right away, to make it be that way. I would think we wouldn't want you to come back and present this to the board and then do this whole thing, and then we raise the fee, because the policy that was created, I've lost track of when it was, but it said, that's supposed to be the goal. The cost is supposed to be constantly, or the fee is supposed to be constantly adjusted to make sure that it's keeping up with our costs.
Right, and I think also in the sheetrock, probably half the sheetrock, and I don't have the exact percentage, but is coming from one generator. So, I had made the point of maybe the generator should be hauling the sheetrock directly to the location of being recycled, and we shouldn't have to handle it for them. You know what I mean? That's
Or we should just increase our fees even more to make it like a revenue generator
Yeah.
for
It's really
us.
coming from one source.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
So it must be a pretty convenient thing that we offer.
it is, for that person, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
But some people we can't get rid of having sheetrock at all.
I'm not
'cause some
saying you
people-
get rid of it, but you have one person that's generating probably half of your sheetrock.
Wow. That's a
But as
lot.
long,
Just
but as
double-
long as the fees are
Sure.
the
Yeah.
right, it shouldn't matter if it's me, you, or if she's bringing in 75% of it.
No.
If we're all paying an equal
Right.
tonnage fee
Right,
for the
right.
sheetrock, what difference would it make? I mean, you're saying we have to handle it, but as long as we're being compensated for
Right.
that.
That's-
It's
that-
not like we don't need an extra person. We haven't had to hire an extra person
No.
just for sheetrock,
Right.
correct?
Right.
No, I'm just saying, half of the sheetrock is being generated by one source.
That's-
If it becomes,
And I
yeah,
probably know exactly who it is.
right.
And maybe it should just be that it's, that instead of trying to make it 100% even out, it should be a little bit above, little bit above our costs, because everything that we add, it's not accepting sheetrock isn't a requirement of a municipality. It's a, we're not, so
We're
it
trying to
is
keep
a
it
little
up.
bit of a convenience that is not used by everybody. And so if it were the fee were a little bit above what our costs are, then it's beneficial to everybody. I mean, I don't know how, I'm not proposing that we quadruple the fee.
No.
But, a little bit of a margin, because it's, it just makes sense.
Good. Any other comments on your part? No? Okay, good.
No.
With that, I'd like to, I'd like to ask for a motion from the board to leave the directors' meeting and convene an executive session under 1 MRSA 405, paragraph 405, 6D, contract negotiations, and also on MRSA, paragraph 405, 6A, personnel matters.
I'll make that. I'll second.
Motion made, second. Any comment, discussion? All's in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Allison, we'll give you a minute. Sure. I'll write down the time. It's 7:15-ish.